It's very nice being recorded for posterity, you know. What do you think? Do you think it's more fun to listen to a talk or give one? Assuming it's fun for either of us. Usually Ken chooses the title of these session that we share, or retreat, and I chose the title this year, but in fact stepping out of self-deception could be the title of any Zen retreat, really, of any Zen meeting, of any Zen workshop. It's pretty, it would cover them all, I guess. Is that right? Yeah. And I did feel a bit apprehensive about it, because it's a bit like asking turkeys for Christmas, isn't it? Asking you to come here with yourselves on the basis that you might get them killed. Yeah. Yesterday I was feeling, you probably, I'm sure you don't know this, but yesterday I was thinking of the title of a book. I would call it The Diary of a Reluctant Zen Teacher. Because on the first day of retreat, out of my own experience, I know how difficult it is to be here, you know, and how really part of me wants to save everybody the pain of arriving and sitting through it and the whole thing, you know. So I just wanted to start at the very beginning about, perhaps you might know, but I think is a very familiar experience, which is that this session starts, stepping out of self-deception, on the very day that you book to come along, because my sense is that the impetus to book comes from the part of us that's like a kind of magnet. It compels us, it wants to be known. You know, the Sufis say God was a hidden treasure who loved to be known, and there's a part of us that wants to be known. And that part of us wants, I think, definitely a kind of sense of a deepening unity and a deepening harmony with our lives. But the problem is the self refuses to go along with it, doesn't really want that. So when we book on sesshin, that part of us that wants to find more harmony and happiness with the self, and then as it gets closer, the self starts to get a bit panicky and nervous and thinking, maybe I should cancel. I'm sure this is resonant for you all. And then the night before you can't sleep, and then on the day of travelling, you're kind of in the car or on the train thinking, do I really want to do this? Why do I need to do? Why am I putting myself through this? And then you finally arrive, and if you're new to it, or you have resistance to it, all the worries that you had immediately come to fruition. You know, people irritate you, you're worried about your knees, the sitting, what's the food going to be like, are the mattresses awful, will you be able to sleep? Does this all echo? Is this right? Yeah. And so you know, the two sides of ourselves are perfectly encapsulated in the arriving at a retreat. So there's this side that wants to be known, whatever we want to call it, and we can look at that later. And there's this side that wants to be left alone to get on with its life. And so we turn up. So I just thought I'd just start by encapsulating or trying to define the two reasons, and this is all, you know, I should say first of all to thank Ken for yesterday's talk, which summarised the whole, let's call it game if you like, so very succinctly and precisely, and we could all take that talk away, and probably that's all we could do with, you know, we could manage with that, but it's nice to have different perspectives and different angles. It keeps us entertained more, I think. But so just briefly, this dilemma of the small self, and I can promise you that I have been, still to somehow degree I am, I'm in this strong grip. I'm eternally deluded. I'm delusion with gold trimmings. I'm an expert on the small self, as we all are, and its constant demands, particularly its need for a purpose and function, and breaking its grip, is a long job. But as I was sitting before, I was thinking it's a bit like, what was that Laurie Lee book, the famous one in the 30s? When I got up one morning and...
I walked out one summer's morning.
What's it?
As I walked out one
morning. There's a prospect of a wonderful journey ahead and lots of adventures, and I prefer to look at this exploration of the self from that perspective. That it's not something onerous or painful, although it is on the way, just like any journey is. But but we can bring an optimism and an excitement to it. It doesn't need to be a kind of dark, miserable thing. I read the other day that Dogen said, I'm not exactly sure what he means, but I really like the sound of it. Dogen says, we need to liberate our delusion. We need to liberate our delusion. I think probably means that we need to embrace it and accept it, and it's okay. And then it'll start to loosen up a bit and lessen its grip on us. So the Buddha was really clear. He said this tradition is simply about the stopping of suffering. And there are many variations on how we do that and why we suffer. But that was his main message. How do we stop suffering? And then the question arises. Why, let's assuming, and I'll talk about that later, why his understanding, why his awareness, his radical, revolutionary awareness at the time, that this sense of self is a delusion, and that's what causes us all our pain. Why does it do that? And even more interesting, why has evolution created a situation in which we develop this small self? Interesting question. Why? Why do we have it? And I hope maybe to address that later at this time. But if I'm talking to your ordinary self, let's call your ordinary self your small self. If yours is like mine, it has a problem with impermanence. It has a problem with eternal choice and change. And it often feels threatened and unsettled. And why does it do that? Yeah. Well, certainly, it's constantly trying to create and I know this is not news to you at all, but it's worth saying over and over again, it is always trying to create a place of stability and security and affirmation of the way it is. And it creates itself from the past, from our loss, from our griefs, from our joys, from our wrong decisions, our right decisions. It creates itself from the future. Anxiety, fear, hopes, ambitions, aspirations. It very rarely sits in the moment. It very rarely sits in the present. It's always planning. And its fundamental problem is, if we accept the truth of the Buddha's awareness or enlightenment, is that it's a made-up concept and it doesn't know it. And it cannot really accept it. And in the looking for its substantiality and its concreteness and its safety and its security, it's always disappointed. Is that right? I'm nearly always disappointed when we look for those things. And of course, we then come to Sesshin. This is the small self coming to Sesshin. It's not the bigger self, which has a different perspective. I'm talking more about the one that we normally bring. which we come here hoping for more liberation and more freedom, and if we don't feel like we're attaining it, we feel like we're failing, and we feel like, oh, maybe we need to do more, maybe we should sit stronger or harder or longer, or do more retreats, or find a different teacher, or go to China or Japan or Thailand or India, or any of the places that we hope we might find the truth. But here's the number bit. We have all those hopes and ideas, but there's also part of us that is really reluctant to desert our personal psychological drama and our story and our life, because if we do, we have the fear that we might not exist. What will we do? What will we do without all these things that have made up our life? So we get into a position where, we're really on the rack, we're on the fence with the fence of our bottoms. On one side we've got this wish for enlightenment, on the other side we've got the fear of enlightenment, on one side we've got the fear of hell, and on the other side we've got the fear of heaven. So we're nailed. Does any of that resonate? And then we've got this other side of the coin, which the Buddha called Atman, Anatta, which is no self. And this idea of no self is also quite scary, because we translate it in the West as emptiness or the void. And I certainly don't like the idea of emptiness or void. Does anyone else? It feels pretty, to be in the emptiness or to be in the void. It's terrible. But I just wanted to clarify that no self means no center, no time, no place, no separation. It does not mean not self or not existing. It does not mean not self or not existing. We emphasize it because most of us are stuck on the other side. But in Buddhist terms, I've written this down so I don't get it wrong. Buddhist terms such as emptiness or void mean the consciousness is empty of anything permanent and is in a constant state of flux, and nothing exists without a prior cause or condition. That's all it means. Nothing exists without a prior cause or condition. But what we would most like is the idea of a permanent self, I think. Now, I don't know whether you got I put out, because I felt like I was emphasizing the delusion of the self too much, and I was giving it such a bad press that I needed to give it a little acknowledgement. So I don't know if anybody saw my mail out about the middle way. And I just want to read you this, because I will read it because it's excellent, and it's from Uchiyama, who was, who wrote Opening the Hand of Thought. And he says the following about the apparent paradox of form, i.e. existence, and emptiness, i.e. non-existence. And emptiness is form. And I think it's a really good piece. It's only one paragraph. The middle way does not mean taking some in-between position that has been conjured up in our heads, nor acting in a compromising way. Rather, despite the fact that we latch on to our ideas of being or non-being, taking the middle way means to demolish all concepts set up in our minds, and without fixing on any reality as any particular thing, to open the hand of life, allowing life to be life. Zazen is the actualization of this middle way that lives at the very quick of life. It is life as life that is interdependent. In short, Zazen enables life to be life by letting it be. By letting it be. And I wanted to talk about that later, this letting it be. How do we let it be? So, any idea that we have about what it is and what it isn't, or what the small self is, or what emptiness is, are all concepts finally. They're all ideas. We have this life, and it's completely free. It's boundless, and we can create with it what we wish. And most of us create a lot of barriers and walls that we then perceive as stopping us doing what we'd like to do. And equally, I also want to say that I really admire everybody who comes to retreat, because for me, an examined life, I don't know, you'll know this quote, Ken, but an examined life, who said an examined life? A life that is not examined is a life not worth leading. Socrates was it, yeah. So we're all examining our life, and in that respect, we're not on automatic. We do have freedom, and we do have the opportunity for change. So I've put four questions down here for the start of session, which was yesterday. One is, who is the self that's here? Which self have you brought? Is there more than one self? Where is all the effort that you put into coming here? And I know it's a huge effort in terms of time, commitment, money, leaving people, partners, children, all those things. Where is all this effort taking me? What is this effort about? Third, what is seeing through your eyes? What is seeing through your eyes? Good question. What is hearing through your ears? And finally, for each of us, who am I? These are real good questions, aren't they? They shake the very bones of you. Who am I? Who is seeing through my eyes? Who's that pesky thing that's seeing through my eyes? And why are we here? And why are you making this effort? Do you give in? So I wanted to start off by talking about silence, which is always a moot point. And I wanted to say something about silence, why we stay in silence, and why silence is so difficult. When we're silent and quiet, certainly we start to feel absent. The sense of me starts to diminish slightly. Whereas the purpose of thinking and much of what we do on an ongoing basis is to keep silence at bay. Is that right? Because if we impose, we bring activity, noise, we separate ourselves from this stillness, and most of what we do is an attempt to fill what we feel would be a nothingness unless we were busy and we were thinking. So when we're quiet and when we all agree to be silent, particularly if we really hold a silence, it can overwhelm the sense of self which we hold dear. So when the battle of silence that we all struggle with is that in fact it's a lot to ask. It is a lot to ask. And at the same time, I'm not going to go into the benefits of There's a lot of concepts and ideas about silence as well, but we can only talk about a few things at once. So as we settle down and as we see our process unfolding in our heads, and we all see it, the insubstantiality, the thoughts that constantly arise, the past, the loop of thoughts that we have, it starts to get a bit difficult, because our normal everyday effort is toward creating a sense of solidity and substantiality, not this insubstantial feeling that can arise. And then we hit the paradox, which we perhaps haven't hit yet, because we're only just started the retreat, is that we start to think and see and experience, as Ken said yesterday, that actually everything is okay. Everything is okay, really. Everything's fine from one perspective. Everything is fine. It's just as it is. It's just as it can only be this way. And yet, there's this other part of us in our heads, and I'm sure it arose for you as soon as I said everything is okay, is that everything isn't okay. There's suffering, there are wars, awful things happen in the world. We talk about the unborn and undying and the timeless, and yet evidently time passes. All the time passes. So when we come up against these this paradox, which is inherent in the teaching, intrinsic in the teaching, it kind of scrambles our certainty. Where do we stand? Which side do we stand on? Do we stand on the stand of everything's fine, or do we stand on the side of everything's needs dealing with? It's, the suffering, we need to act. Social action is a necessity. And it's echoed. We talked about it before, and you're all very familiar with it's not even a metaphor; it's the truth that at a very basic level, scientists don't know whether light is a wave or a particle. Sometimes it acts as a wave, sometimes it acts as a particle. It can't be pinned down, and we can't pin this question down. We can't pin it down. We can't. So, ideally, what I suggest, the ideal place, if you like, to sit in Zen, in this tradition, is on that knife edge, without having to sit on either side of the fence, without any judgment. We just sit and be present. And that's difficult, isn't it? Is that difficult, to sit and be present? Because that old this and that mind definitely comes up. And what's fantastic about the retreat and this whole setup that we all create together is that it gives us a wonderful opportunity to this it's called stepping out of self-deception. Well, it gives us this great opportunity because we choose to place ourselves in a situation in which we increase our sensitivity because we're sitting, we increase our self-awareness, we're cheek and jowl against other people that we don't perhaps know, irritations come up, resistance comes up about being here, it's a beautiful day, why aren't I out? All those things. So the retreat actually creates the very vehicle for us to see how this idea that we have of ourselves, of small self, it creates all the opportunities for us to see it arising. And is there anybody here that it hasn't arisen for yet? Is there anybody that's not been the least bit niggled or questioned or thought, why am I here? Or why is so-and-so doing this? Why is so-and-so doing that? Why is such and such telling me to do this? And yeah, if I asked you, can you tell me what it is that you're protecting, that you're defending? Can you? What is it down there in the middle that you're protecting and defending? Can you find it? Can you bring it to me? Can you show it to me? And yet we invest such a lot of energy into looking after it. So this practice is about, navigating a course through the appearance that the world has through the perpetuation of our conditioning, our ideas, our reluctance to change. How do we navigate through that to come to this place in ourselves where the unity and harmony that we would like to access becomes perceptible. So that's why we emphasize directing awareness toward the emptiness of all things and understanding how the mind or the self creates its reality. And it's our willingness it's our willingness to really look at that and try and untie the knot that's really important. And the Buddha, have many people read the original texts of Buddhism? Do many people familiar with old texts, with his original teachings? I'm not. Yeah. You are, yeah, you have, yeah. Many of us have not really explored that, And yet, what strikes me, and I haven't, I much prefer to read commentaries and things that other people have picked out for me, the good bits. But he was a man just like us. He really was, and the difficulties and problems and issues he had, and the symbolism of the story of his discovery of old age, sickness, and death, are all really valid, and they're all about our own lives. And something that he said that I think is evidently true to all of us is that it's our unobserved thoughts and our unobserved actions, and when we operate out of an automatic place, when we're on automatic, we're not thinking, we're not self-aware, we're not considering other people, or sometimes we are, but in a particular way. Gradually over the years, this is what accumulates into our character. This is who we become. Our characters aren't by chance. I mean, some of it, obviously we're born with, and there's, genes, but our characters come out of the way we act, the way we are, the way we think. So we reach the place then, where we, that's why I really encourage folk to start practice early, because we reach the place where what we see out of our eyes and what we hear in our ears and what we, our views, our limitations are all conditioned by our history and by the narrative that we give our story and the assumed reality of who we are. And this unquestioning belief that, the Dharma, conflict, events in our lives are who I am. And believe me, each of us, and this is always hard to hear, and that's why I say it, because I say it for myself as well, is that each of us, genuinely, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but each of us believes that our own journey, our own pain, the difficulties that happen to us, our own, is in a way uniquely difficult. We've been dealt, our hand has been dealt for us in a way that creates particular hardship for us. And it's really worth remembering, that we all have that view, because when we think about it from that perspective, it really allows us to loosen up. And it's also hard to hear. I'm going to carry on. I'm not going to stop. But has anybody got anything? I'd really love you to join in. If I'm very happy to hear your perspective on this, and do tell me if, in your case, I'm wrong. So has anybody thought about why this situation, this set of affairs has developed? Has anybody thought why? Why is evolution? Who's responsible for this? Who's out there creating this difficulty and suffering for us? Has anybody thought why that's arisen? Yeah. It's a strange business, isn't it? And has anybody thought about what is this true nature that we talk about? What is God? What is, we call it in other people. I'm sure, when people use the term God, they mean the same thing. What is it? What is this authentic nature? What's the source of it?
Sensei, I offer that at one level, having a discriminating mind is clearly useful.
Yeah.
Having a physical body in a physical world, if we didn't, we may have a lot of difficulty interacting with it. So at some level that is useful.
Yeah.
But it seems that the problem that you're talking about, the Buddha talked about, was where we constantly use that discrimination about everything.
Yeah.
So, do I like this? Do I like this place? Do I like this talk? Do I like this life? In the same way, do I like, when's the next bus coming?
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
at that level.
Too much of it. Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah. Too much of it. Yeah. Too much.
Sorry, isn't it also quite useful because it stops people from maybe beating kids in school used to happen in the old days, and maybe there's a different way of thinking things through, and there's an evolutionary aspect to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cruelty and
for sure.
And maybe that might be consciousness of Buddha nature mixing with evolution, but
Absolutely, it's useful. Yeah. I mean, we don't boil each other and eat each other anymore. It's handy. Yeah. It's been handy. Yeah. Sorry.
I was watching this course on the internet, and it was actually about evolution and stuff. Their point is that evolution is not interested in you being happy. Evolution is interested in you
breeding.
And therefore, if you are paranoid all the time and see snakes everywhere, and that helps you to live longer because you avoid snakes, that's good for you. And again, if you eat huge amounts of fatty food, evolutionally that's good for you because you won't die later. But then that raises the question, why can we turn it off? Where is this Buddha nature coming from if it isn't from evolution?
Okay, thank you.
I completely reject the idea of evolution. I don't think it's true. I just think it's a scientific common sense thing. It's just an assumption,
Okay, well that's a radical viewpoint. Thank you. So we'll reject evolution over there. Okay, thank you. Aren't we wonderful? We have so many views, don't we? It's great.
Can I ask about dogs and animals? I was thinking just the other day, dogs, it's easy when they go to bed, they just go to the loo, whatever they call it, and then they go to sleep.
Yeah.
We can spend hours doing whatever we do. In other words, we have this difference between us and animals in a sense.
Yeah, they don't have
themselves.
They don't have self-awareness. They don't have self-consciousness.
So that's why we have the little self, because it's to do with self-consciousness, isn't it? I don't know.
No, thank you. It's interesting. I'll read you I've read it up here. How did the sense of self arise? I'll read you the traditional Buddhist, which is the dependence origination, which I always found hard to understand. But this, I don't know where I got this from, but it makes... So this is the traditional view of where the self arose. I'll read it to you. Dependence on ignorance arises karmic formations. Dependent on karmic formations arises consciousness. Dependent on consciousness arise mind and matter. Dependent on mind and matter arises the six senses. Dependent on the six senses arises contact. Dependent on contact arises feeling. Dependent on feeling arises craving. Dependent on craving arises grasping. Dependent on grasping arises becoming. Dependent on becoming arises birth. Depending on birth arises aging and death and sorrow and lamentation and pain and grief. Thus there is the arising of this whole mass of suffering. I love lamentation. Must say that way for a while.
What's that from?
Pardon?
What's that?
It's the traditional Buddhist cause of rebirth, dependence origination. So it's the craving that causes the suffering, and how does that arise? And the very first line is, it's dependence on ignorance arises karmic formation. So actually it doesn't answer the question, because it depends on ignorance, but the ignorance arises in this tradition. The ignorance is not knowing that this self is not permanent. So it doesn't answer that.
Where does that one?
Where does that one come from? Yeah, okay. Where does that one come from? Now, I'm just going to give you a very, very positive view of my sense of it, which and I've approached it from the perspective of my own life, really, of how, for me and for you. I'm going to keep it really short, so don't ask me too many technical, physical questions. But what have I written down? Where's it gone? Yeah. So, at the very beginning, I think it's 4 billion years ago, suddenly, something with consciousness arises. Awareness becomes present. Something has awareness. That awareness, and it's that awareness, if you like, that for me, that inhabits, if you like, something which appears on this planet, is the awareness that lies behind everything. And it's the awareness that I have, it's the awareness that sees through my eyes, and it's the awareness that wants to be known. So this awareness arises over millennium, many years and years and years, and billions of years. All kinds of sentient beings and non-sentient beings arise. And we all have this common heritage. Out of all the different adaptations and all the different species, this human form uniquely arose. And it developed the ability to have subjective experience, i.e., it was able to think about itself. It was able to, if you like, have self-consciousness. And, as it'll be said, this self-consciousness was a fantastic tool. It really allowed us to develop as human beings, and the sense of self, which emphasized individuality, worked. However, in that process, we forgot this very basic awareness that originated the whole thing. And just like in my life, and everybody else's life, in the scale of my life, I have been very attached to the individual, unique, personal self called David Scott. But I discovered at some point that actually it was causing me trouble. It's still useful, but it become overemphasized and was causing me a lot of difficulty and suffering. And I needed to, and I feel it's the same process has happened, but on a billion year scale, that this very useful adaptation of self-consciousness has become overemphasized in us, and we've forgotten the very source of our being. And this practice allows us to explore that. So, from that perspective, when I look out of my eyes to ask that particular question at the very beginning of the talk, when I look out, what I'm looking at, and what's looking and experience is this original awareness. Now, what that is, I have no idea. Now, the Buddha was incredibly clever. I mean, he cut through all the crap, you know. He just said it's unborn and it's undying. We don't have to worry then if it's unborn and it's undying. We don't have to worry about first cause, which is a great problem, I believe. As you will know more than I, for scientists. First cause. What went on before the Big Bang? What will go on after this whole thing? As it will, fades to nothing. Will there be another Big Bang? Will it happen again? So, you know, when we the Buddha created a really his understanding, his awareness, his clarity, his flash of that this self is anatta, is in fact without substance. If we really accept that, that requires us to bring a whole new revolutionary view of the way we lead our lives. So this is a practice. This is a practice for warriors. Really it is. Because if we really take it on board, we have to really review how we're choosing to lead our lives. How would it be if we really owned up to the fact that our personal story is based on the wrong premise? How would that feel?
But we also have the capability to change it as well.
Yeah, we do. Which is freedom. Which is absolute freedom. Yeah. And now here's the really interesting bit for me, is that the more, and this is only a pragmatic, not a complete process in me, and it may be more so in some of you than it is in me at the moment, but what I find is that strangely, the more I can loosen the grip of personal motivation and selfishness and all those things, strangely, all the things I was looking for arise. It's an oddest thing, you know. So the spiritual life, the things that you would like, of feeling connected, of feeling love, of feeling kindness, of feeling kind to other people and people being kind to you, and joy, all those things that are intrinsic and inherently present in us start to arise when we stop trying to grab them. Which is, you know, not business. It's very counterintuitive. So although this thought of emptiness or anatta or the void or all these awful words may on the surface be frightening, in fact, if we can kind of dive in and let go of our support structure, then what arises is the very sense of freedom that we really want.
Is that guaranteed?
Pardon?
Is that guaranteed?
Yeah. Yeah, but only for the moment. This is irrelevant, I don't think, but it kind of, I don't know why it struck me. It's a joke I heard on the television. Have you seen those series where they have various professions telling jokes, and they had undertakers telling jokes? I didn't realise that undertakers are such snappy dressers. Did you see them? They're all really kind of, different outfits and looking quite cool. I thought it was good. Undertakers, the job to go if you like to dress up. Anyway, this undertaker told a joke, which I told Suzanne, so she can't laugh again, about a duck that goes into a bar. And he did it in a kind of quacky voice, which I can't do. But the duck said to the barman, "Have you got any bread?" And the barman says, "No, I haven't got any bread." So the duck leaves. He comes back the next day, and the duck says to the barman, "Have you got any bread?" And the barman says, "I told you yesterday, we don't keep bread, clear off." And the duck leaves. He comes back on a third day and he says, "Have you got any bread?" The barman said, he said, "If you come in here once again," he said, "I'm going to nail your beak to the bar." And the duck said, "Have you got any nails?" And the barman said, "No." And the duck said, "Have you got any bread?" And it so strikes me, it's what we do all the time. We keep kind of, we keep thinking we're going to find a purpose, a point, a reason. And, and our inner judge keeps telling us what what it's going to do to us. And, we keep coming back for more bread. And, what should the barman have done? He should have said to the duck, "Should have been nice, sorry, we don't have bread." And every day he came in, "I'm sorry, we don't have bread. Maybe if you go down the road, you'll find a baker." But we're not kind to ourselves, we don't give ourselves a break. And what I really want, maybe on Thursday, there's time always goes so fast. What I really want to emphasize in this practice, that what I've finally arrived at, is to go easy on yourself. You can't force it. You can't make it happen. You can't beat yourself into some frame of mind or some way of being, or you can't stop your thoughts. You just can't gainsay the process. And the final irony is that at some point you will realize that you're already there. The whole journey was to discover that you didn't need to take the journey, but the paradox is that unless you take the journey, you can't find that out. It's a bastard. It's like freedom, we have this idea of freedom, but as soon as we posit the idea of freedom, we immediately create the possibility that we're trapped. So, 3 key words: relaxing, letting be, and observing. That's the sermon for today. Thank you. Now, do feel free to comment, ask questions, disagree.
Sensei, I'm just interested. I love the idea of go on this journey to try and get nowhere, and you realise it's there all the time. But in the process, there's a lot of research being done now about how brains are changing with mindfulness and practitioners. So there is something that we are doing to our bodies from a physical sense.
I agree.
To the spiritual places taking us.
Yeah, I agree.
To a different place, although we couldn't get there without doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. We along the way we slowly discover the conditions that we need to create to allow us to keep moving. Yeah, to change. Yeah, for sure. I'm glad there is the possibility of change. Are you?
There is a long tradition in Buddhism and Zen for people who don't agree with you.
Yeah.
I think of one of my favourites is Su Yun, the Chan master, who lived for 118 years. And he chopped his finger off, and apparently that was traditional in his sect. He chopped at least one finger off,
Why did he do that? Chop his finger off?
I think just,
He wasn't.
not attached to anyone.
Because the Yakuza also cut their fingers off.
Who?
The Japanese
Oh, do
crime syndicate, the Yakuza, yeah, they chopped their fingers off as a sort of sign of atonement. They've been bad. But we can only express our truth in our own way, can't we? Otherwise, it's phony. So he may have been expressing his truth, but for me, any kind of self-amputation is definitely out of the question.
But he was particularly scathing about people who wanted an easy road.
Who wanted an easy road?
Yeah.
There isn't an easy road. I don't think there is an easy road. If there was an easy road, I'd be on it.
It seems to be an awful long road. It's like it takes time to process all these things. It feels like an organic thing.
Yeah, it is organic. Yeah.
It's like judgment. I find that the less judgmental you become, you seem to have more compassion. But that isn't something you could force. It takes time.
Yeah. And even if you reach the end of the road, you stop, have a picnic, and then get your map out. Probably. Think, where can I find another route? What's that graffiti that's scrawled on the wall on Maryland Street?
What is it? Happiness is the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, happiness is the journey, not the destination. Some graffiti artist in Liverpool has written on our wall. More sense than most of us he's got, yeah. Can I just say one last thing about this that I think can get confused? Maezumi Roshi was really clear, and without in any way assuming to have his clarity, the appreciation of our lives is what this practice is about. And the Buddha, Dalai Lama, said it was about being happy. And the Buddha said it was about the reduction of suffering. They're all saying the same thing, which is that let's enjoy our lives. And so some of the things that happen in to come back to the mundane of a Zen retreat that seem fussy and can upset you and irritate you when you first come to them, like taking care about things, about taking care about the way we eat, about how all the mats and cushions are lined up, about having a lovely floral arrangement on the altar, about lighting incense. They're all ways of bringing us back to being able or finding that place in ourselves to just appreciate the ordinary. And it's what's always attracted me about Zen. It makes the ordinary sacred. It's just our ordinary everyday life offers boundless opportunities to really appreciate life, and we try and recreate that in some small way by bringing ourselves back to be aware. So we do hear the birds, so we do enjoy the sun, so we do notice spring in the things that we do in the Zendo.
It's like we said about letting it be, because that kind of thing has come up for me when I've been sitting, and it's this idea to it's difficult to accept that we're already there. Just trying, for me, it's just trying to accept I'm already there. Just accept that, and try and just be with this.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Can I
Thank
just
you.
ask,
Oh, sorry.
have we got any bread?